Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Carl's Roller Coaster Podcast. Hello, dear friends. How are you all? You are about to get inspired. My guest today is Sophie Grace Holmes. Sophie is a fitness coach, public speaker, influencer, ultra-endurance athlete, and a businesswoman. Sophie was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis at 4 months old. CF being an inherited disorder that causes severe damage to the lungs, digestive system, and other organs in the body. She was told from a very young age that she might not make it to 30, and this has definitely given her a very unique outlook on life. She thrives off physical challenge and, wow, she scaled Mont Blanc, Mount Kilimanjaro, Grand Paradiso, she hiked the Himalayas, and she engaged on various challenges as you hear next, including training for an Ironman currently. She is without a doubt someone that really inspired me, and I truly believe it will inspire you. With you guys now, I'll leave you with Sophie Grace Holmes. Hello, Sophie. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you. And how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for making the time to talk to us today. Welcome to the roller coaster. How has your 2020 been so far? Crazy year for all of us, but it's just something that I keep asking everyone how your year has been, because it's been so strange and different for everyone. So how has yours been?
It's been actually pretty mental, but for me, it's actually been a huge benefit. And it's always quite hard to say that because obviously it's been a really tragic year as well, like different reasons. But for me, in terms of my lifestyle and my work, I've actually now managed to push myself into being able to do the stuff I really want to do and follow what I'm truly passionate about, simply because I got told to stay in my house for 12 weeks.
That's amazing. I have a feeling that has to do with you being able to train harder, perhaps, or because I had some goals this year in terms of racing myself, but then obviously with all the marathons and half marathons and all those events being cancelled, it just it's hard to keep motivated, right? But it seems that you've been keeping busy, right?
Yeah, I thrive off it being busy anyway. So obviously on the 18th of March, when obviously I've got cystic fibrosis, which was classed as vulnerable, I had to stay in my house for 12 weeks, and it meant that I actually had to shut my business because I had a one-to-one personal training business. But it actually enabled me to put myself in a situation where I was like, okay, well, this is where I am. What do I actually want my life to look like? I basically have recreated my entire life and molded it into the way I actually want it to be.
That's very interesting, especially because you just touched on, I was going to go down that road later on, but since you touched on your particular condition, which is cystic fibrosis, which is something that I haven't heard about it before, and then prior to this chat with you, I kind of like dived into it a bit, and it's something very, very complicated, isn't it? It's not an easy one to deal with. It's something that affects a lot of people, and people are just not, it's not something that it's around, and people don't talk much about it. But you were diagnosed at 4 months old, and if you could please just tell us how, first of all, where did you grow up at, and how was your upbringing around this particular condition till you evolved into your late teens and then eventually dived into the sports world, which then we're going to talk a little bit about it later.
Yeah, of course. So as you've just said, I was diagnosed at 4 months old, and I was actually 10 weeks premature anyway. So for my mom and dad, that was obviously a concern. And then obviously seeing their child not thriving and being very sick, and then eventually being diagnosed with a life-threatening lung disease, and then being told that their child may not meet reach the age of 16. Now, I can't even imagine what that must feel like, but it must have been hard for them. But what they didn't know was the fact that, I was a born fighter. And, even when I was growing up, all the doctors would say, oh, well, you're not going to make 16 years old. Like, how do you feel about that? And for me, like, it just gave me the determination to live fully. And I'm a firm believer of it's what you do with the years that you are here rather than the length of life you have. And, I'm very lucky because it's given me a very unique outlook on life. And my parents allowed me to basically do everything that a normal child would do. I was in all the sports teams. I always did the things I wanted to do. I was very lucky, and I had horses, and I had a very normal childhood around the hospital visits, the 18 tablets I have to take every day. And actually, cystic fibrosis has made me the person I am. So I am very grateful for that. Although it is obviously hard and quite fitting, a roller coaster. But at the same time, I think you were given a hand because you are strong enough to fight it and overcome it. And I do believe that. So I wouldn't change it, actually. If someone said to me, oh, could you go back and not have it? I probably wouldn't take that life, because I would probably then also be a very different person, and I wouldn't have had all the amazing experiences that I have now had.
Yeah, just for those of you that are listening to us, cystic fibrosis is an inherited disorder that causes severe damage to the lungs and digestive system,
Yeah.
and other organs in the body as well. And the several complications that can obviously follow that. And the life expectancy is something that it's very troubling for people that carry this disease, because just like you just said, Sophie, I mean, doctors were telling you that you wouldn't live past 16 years old, which is long past for you right now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, not that long, but like it's good, isn't it? It's like,
oh no, it's amazing. I celebrate every year, and actually, when I was 19 years old, I was actually given 2 years to live, because I became seriously ill, and I sat there in my hospital bed, and I was like, oh, that's like really cool, but I've actually got a life to live, and I've got stuff to do. I don't have time to die. And then this is when like kind of my adventure started of like doing all these big, amazing challenges, mountains, ultra marathons, paddleboarding across oceans and stuff. And I do believe that in the face of adversity, we have the opportunity to kind of embrace it. And actually, it can give us an even bigger life if we choose to follow that route. And I'm 100% sure that if I hadn't have faced that when I was 19 and kind of got told those facts and got myself re-educated and kind of training and pushing myself towards what I really wanted to do, I definitely wouldn't have had the last 10 years that I have had. And they have been seriously amazing. And I have met some seriously incredible people and learned so much. And one of the biggest lines that one of my friends said once, and it's something that stays with me a lot, especially if I'm feeling lazy or I just can't be bothered to do something. And he said, it's the excuses that you make today that will be the regrets you have at the end of your life. And actually, I think my biggest fear is having that regret simply for making an excuse. So it's something that I live by really now. But as I've said, like having cystic fibrosis is hard work, but I probably still wouldn't change it, because actually, although it can scare the hell out of you, as you've said, like it's a terrible disease, but at the same time, it has definitely made me stronger and it's made me more determined.
Where do you think this inner strength of yours came from? I mean, like you said, as a 19-year-old and having a doctor telling you that, I mean, it's just, I can't imagine that happening to myself or to a loved one, let alone to a teenager, a girl. I mean, were your parents of massive influence in that way? Are your parents like a couple of very positive characters that influenced you and imputed in you in a way that sort of positive approach to life and encouragement to life, or was it something that was just within you naturally?
I think naturally it is in me anyway. Like I've always kind of been very upbeat and positive and like wanting to live and have fun. And things like that. And obviously, for a parent, you know, they showed strength and they showed support and positivity, but obviously, internally, they probably were also very scared and worried, especially when I did become sick and things. And I think for me, like, there is quite a lot of power also in naivety, because obviously, up until the age of probably 19, I obviously accepted that I had to take these tablets and had these hospital visits, but in reality, I wasn't missing out on anything, and I was living a very normal life. And so I kind of even thought, I was like, oh well, maybe the doctors got it wrong, maybe I don't have this cystic fibrosis they're telling me I've got. And then obviously I became ill, and I was like, do you know what though, the power of your mind is incredible, and you have to really push yourself to train it to be the strongest tool you've got, because your mind will rule everything, and it's what you focus on is how your story or how your journey will develop. And for me, I was like, do you know what, I'm going to control what I have power over, and that is my mind, and that is partially my body. So I'm going to do everything I physically can. And obviously, once I've set my mind on something, I will keep going until I've achieved it. And I think for my parents, they knew that I have this trait, so they will just support anything that I've wanted to do.
When did you started running? When was the first time that you kind of like kept running as a regular thing on your life?
So probably when I was about 10 or 11 years old, I used to compete on the track for county, so 100 meters, 200 meters, and 400s. So I started doing loads of running there. And my dad's also an old marathon runner, so he's obviously run all his life. So we used to run together. So it's something that's been in my life a very long time. It's not my most passionate way of fitness, but it's something that I do value and feel very grateful that I can do, for one, but also it is something that also is amazing to be able to go and do with your friends or your family, or even go and do all the challenges and things. So it's always something that I will do for as long as I can walk.
Fair. I mean, you did you do the Sahara 100K that I was reading on that article? Is that something that happened back then?
No, that was actually supposed to happen this year. However, obviously COVID got in the way. But I've done a 100 kilometer ultra marathon in the past in Cotswolds, about 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was now.
It's crazy. I mean, I have so many friends that are into the ultra world, and it's something that for me it's kind of like not on my horizon at the moment, but it certainly has its appeal. It's more a mind work than a physical work, isn't it? It's something that you really have to be very strong-minded and really focused, and keep pushing yourself in order to complete the distance, because the distances are so long. I mean, people do like 50K ultras these days, but I think that's obviously it's always a good start, I suppose, but it gets really serious when you go over 70, 80 kilometers, I suppose.
Yeah, and do you know what? Like, it's what I love doing. That's the reason I love it, because it really tests you as a person. Because the easy option, and this applies just to life in general, will always be there. And it's the moments of the pain and the darkness, and you're in your mind battling every part of you to keep going. It's You've just got to take another step. You've just got to dig a little bit deeper. And it's in those moments of question of you really do find out who you are, what you're made of, and you know your capabilities. And you can also really realize, like, what do you want out of this life? And unless you push yourself and get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and I do believe if you do what's hard, life does become easier, and you can deal with life easier when things do go wrong or you have difficult times. And for me, I think, especially because obviously this year we haven't been able to do the things, we haven't been able to do the challenges. This weekend, I actually completed a 25-hour bike time lapse.
Wow.
And it really reminded me as to why I love doing them so much, because obviously it's been so long. And although it was long and I was awake for 40 hours for the whole weekend, and obviously, you do have moments where you get more tired and things. But when I got back to my house, I was like, do you know what? I now feel so full of life and energy, and it's given me so much. And it's reminded me as to why I love pushing myself so much.
Wow, that's incredible. Where this thing took place at?
It was actually, we had to do it in a venue in London.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it was a long day, as you can
So,
imagine.
I mean, when it comes to running and cycling, do you follow a particular training program for anything, or do you have like a certain number of days of the week that you practice both, or one or the other? How do you get yourself ready to tackle such challenge on the bike like you just did this past weekend?
It's just hours on the bike. Last September, I rode the length of Britain on my bike in 9 days. Um, it's just about being on the bike continuously for quite a long time.
I
Like
fi-
you're probably looking to train maybe 10 hours a week if you're doing like true endurance on a bike. Not obviously in one go always, but over the period of the week. So it's a lot of effort, but the more you do it, the better you get. So
it's really interesting how it is, because I myself never been a cyclist, but just recently got into the cycling world as per se.
amazing.
Yeah, and but it's so different than running, because running is my main thing. I do run a fair bit, but really interesting how you think that just because you are fit in one sport, you can tackle the other in the same way. You fitness wise, you probably can, but I don't know, that the mechanics are different, and I suppose your ambitions, they differ obviously when it comes to one sport and the other. But I find it really difficult to get the same passion on while cycling that I get while running, and I believe as well that cycling is something that can be sustained for longer in life than running, because running is so painful on the body when you like training constantly and on a high mileage and doing track training and things like that. Do you have any particular goals in regards of how you're gonna perform on sport, or is it something that you do it only for for your own health, obviously, for your spiritual, for psychological health, not spiritual health, should I say, psychological health and physical health? Is Or do you particularly follow any, or have any sorts of big goals, say running a marathon in a specific time, or running a half marathon in a specific time, or doing what you just did this weekend, which is incredible?
Yeah, I have many goals. um, I mean, for me, like I always want to be able to perform my best. So I want to be as fast and as strong as possible in all disciplines. I'm training for an Ironman, so obviously I've got a time target in place because I actually did an Ironman from my house in lockdown, as you do. Why
Seriously?
not? Yeah, I set up the turbo trainer in my lounge and then ran 842 laps of my front lawn for the marathon. So
Oh my god, that's
it's kind of an
incredible.
interesting target, but mindset wise, it was crazy. But if I was like, do you know what? If I can do this in my house, I can do it in the mountains of Austria. So
Wow. Wow, that is
yeah,
inspirational for sure. When I get people saying that they lost motivation during the last few months, I mean, wow, that's really inspirational. That's for sure.
oh, thank you. But you know what? Like, I think goals are so important. Like, obviously, I do these things for my physical health to help with my cystic fibrosis. But the power it has on your mindset as well is phenomenal. I think just moving, even if you can move a little bit each day, it really does make the difference, especially if you are struggling. Like, I know sometimes it's super hard to kind of get back into the routine of doing these things,
Do you,
but the discipline is worth it because I don't really believe or rely on motivation because I think that comes and goes. You've just got to really work on becoming disciplined to be able to achieve stuff and also have goals in the diary or like time frames that you are really passionate about because fitness should be fun. So it should never be something that feels like a total chore. Like obviously some days it's harder to do than others, but at the same time, ultimately you should be doing a sport that you do enjoy.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree 100% with you on that one. Do you, when it comes to planning, for example, you said that you're training for to do an Ironman. How do you get yourself ready for such challenge in regards of structuring your training plan? Do you do it by yourself, or do you have assistance from other coaches, or do you have any mentors, anybody that help you organize the training side of things? We're going to talk about diet later on, but the training aspect of it, how do you approach it?
So for obviously the Ironman that I'm doing was obviously supposed to happen in July. So I did have a coach on the run up to that Ironman. So basically what I've done is I've just continued the training as if the Ironman is still happening, because obviously I'm going to do it next year. So what I'll probably do is from January is pick back up with a coach and do it that way, because I'm now changed my goals towards this particular Ironman, because originally it was I've never done an Ironman, so I want to finish, whereas now it's I've done an Ironman from my house, I want to get a particular time. So basically this winter is focused on getting stronger in bike, run, swim, and obviously like getting stronger in the gym and stuff. And then as January hits, it will be more focused on getting the endurance back in the body to be able to perform for at least 12 hours, obviously on the day.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like, it's just a massive, massive event, isn't it? Is it like 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and a marathon basically distance,
Yeah.
right? Goodness, wow.
It's a busy day.
It is a busy day. How to allocate the hours on the week to, for example, to do the cycling side of it, to do the running side of it? Do you particularly focus on one or the other more in regard, just because you might feel that you are, I don't know, like I said, myself, if I was to tackle such a challenge, I would probably put a lot of more, I mean, not a lot more, but like a fair amount of extra hours on the riding side aspect of it, because running is my main thing, and swimming, I think it would be the easiest part of it. Do you particularly feel that one of the three you kind of have to focus more?
For me, I've been focusing a lot more, especially recently, on the swimming. Just because obviously in the Ironman, predominantly you're going to be using your legs. So I've been doing a lot of pool sessions in the pool, just because obviously if you use your legs too much, they're going to get more tired. So I've been really focusing recently on that. I do a lot of open water cold sea swimming anyway, because I live on the beach. So I've been doing all of that. But for me, probably I will allocate weekends for a long ride and then also a long run, depending on obviously the sessions, and then the other ones will be shorter during the week. The thing is with Ironman training, alongside obviously if you're trying to get stronger in the gym to complement, it's you're probably looking at about 14 hours a week training at least. So it's busy, but obviously I'm self-employed, so I can kind of work my hours a bit easier than if I was obviously working for somebody else.
It's definitely a part-time activity, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Many hours. Well, not counting the hours that you plan, well, refueling and getting your diet up to scratch, isn't it? Because that's a big part of training and recovery, which is so crucial, especially when you pushing yourself to such limits, which is what you're currently doing, training and well, preparing yourself to do an Ironman. Which brings the subject of diet. I mean,
Yeah.
do you have any particular diet that you follow?
Yeah, so I've actually been working with a really, really amazing guy called Evan, who has been helping me with my nutrition for the last few months. And basically the focus is to remain strong and gaining in terms of the sport, obviously, but also really focusing on what my body actually needs specifically for the recovery, as you've said, for the fueling, for like the long rides, and testing out what actually works, because what you do in training is what you're going to use on race day. So you need to really know exactly what you're doing each hour that you're training, especially when you're combining three disciplines together. And so it's been super interesting, because I think even for me, like with the knowledge I did have before him, even I was missing things out and I didn't realize I was lacking in certain areas. And, you know, it's made all the difference for me, learning exactly what needs to happen at exactly what time, and even to the point of like what you need to eat before you train, the reasons you need to eat certain things after you train, and also, you know, what happens if you don't eat enough. And actually you learn the hard way, especially if you're out on a long bike ride and you haven't fueled enough, or you've missed a fueling session and you've hit the wall, and then you realize actually if that was to happen on race day, that would be only down to you not obviously preparing properly.
And are you vegetarian? Do you eat meat, or do you have any diet restrictions, anything like that?
No, like I just focus on like, you know, making sure that I get everything I need to get in, lots of fruit and veg, good proteins, good carbs. You know, like I don't really believe in full restriction, but then also I do love to eat really good food anyway. So for me, like having cravings isn't really a thing, and
Oh,
because I
is it
eat
not?
what my body needs, and if I fancy something and I'm training hard, then obviously I would just eat it.
Fair, fair. I mean, I love that approach because that's exactly how I truly believe that people should approach those things and not bend just to one side or the other, because it is really tricky. I mean, you get to see a lot of people that they train really hard and they plan a lot, and then they commit the mistake of not knowing what to eat and when to eat, and sometimes people just practice in the sport as well just for the simple fact that they think that they can consume any kind of food, but not knowing that certain types of food, they do cause a lot of uh, chemical imbalances, let's put it this way, within your organism, and that creates a problem that might, accumulate down the road. When it comes to your particular health and being an athlete as you are, is there anything that you try to avoid that you really like, but you try to avoid? Like, for example, I love eating sugary stuff. I do love eating cake and things like that, but I don't eat it regularly. I treat it as a treat. Do you have any particular weaknesses when it comes to that?
I mean, who doesn't love cake? Really? That's
True.
the only reason I've got a bike. That's what cyclists do, isn't it? You go and ride and get coffee and cake and come back. That's what I do.
It's part of the culture of riding a bike, isn't it? Cake and coffee.
Honestly, it is. If you haven't done that yet, you're missing out. Um, yeah, obviously, it's hard because obviously we all love that kind of stuff. Because sugar is probably the most addictive thing, I think. But as I've said, because I don't really restrict in terms of I don't binge on it because I'm eating all the time. But if I fancy something, I would have it. Um, and also, I feel like life is way too short not to enjoy these things. And because food is very emotional, and it has obviously a lot of triggers and things. And especially if you start being too restrictive, you'll find yourself probably going fully the other way. And as I've said, like on a Sunday, normally I do a long ride, and normally that would involve us going to get a coffee and cake. So, I know it is in my week, and I know it's something that I really look forward to. And I think if you have things like that you look forward to, you then really actually enjoy them properly as well.
Totally, absolutely. I think there's certain, like, well, food obviously is one of them, and like beer. People nowadays, it's becoming obviously more widespread. But a few years ago, I remember then people would come to me and say, "What? So you run and then you drink beer?" And I said, "Well, I'm not entirely sure why you're questioning me about that. Beer is just like carbohydrates and water, you know." And and people would totally come and say things like, "Oh my God, but." I never believed that you could actually, train so hard and consume alcohol. And I'm like, well, but it's all in moderation. It's not that you're going out
Yeah,
and getting
exactly.
pissed, every night and things like that. Not that that was never done before, obviously, but it's just not something that you would accommodate between, when you like really training hard for a specific, race that you so looking forward to it. You can't spoil it. But it's interesting how you can combine things with, for example, people that tend to just say, well, drink or eat the wrong types of food, and eventually you can combine both worlds, and then people start to become more active, because
Yeah.
we just completely unlearn how to be, historically. We just kind of like, became way too lazy and lost all the benefits that
Yeah.
literally just I always say to people are like, and I'm gonna ask this to you as well. I'll extend the I'm gonna make an affirmation about me, but then extend the question to you. I get a lot of people say, oh, but I can't do what you're doing. I can't run this fast. I can't do this. I can't do that. And I always say it's definitely not about that. It's not about the distance. It's not about how fast you can do this thing or not. I think it's all about just doing it. Just literally, I mean, if you go out and 3-4 times a week you expose yourself to the nature, you jog for a bit and you walk for a bit, you just, elevate your heartbeat a little, and then all of a sudden it's a long process. It's not that you've been lazy for God knows how many years and not following a particularly good diet, that all of a sudden going once or twice you're gonna like, oh my God, my life has changed completely. It's not like that. It's something that you really kind of have to implement and incorporate on your life in order to keep up with. And when people see it, that it's actually doable, they become really inspired and they start doing it. So on your for yourself, like, how do you get a lot of people that are like, oh my God, but I can't do this 100K that you just did? I mean, does people sometimes bring that to you, and what sort of reply do you give them?
Yeah, of course. And I think, especially with the cystic fibrosis, I do get people just being like, I can't do that and I can't do this. And I'm like, well, firstly, once upon a time, I probably couldn't either. So do not compare your day one to, I don't know, my day 3000. And also, I'm a firm believer that you can achieve anything you put your mind to, so long as you put in the effort. It may take longer for you to achieve certain things than some people, but you will get there if you want it enough. And, just because this is what I love to do also, it doesn't mean that other people have to do it. It's about finding what you really want to do. And if you find something you want to do enough, you will put in the effort to train for it or aim for the event, and you will go and get it done. But, it is difficult because obviously, there is a lot of self-doubt, and how do you then get people to kind of believe that they can? And as you said, it's just about being consistent and getting out there and not even really worrying about things like that at the start. It's like, well, I want to be a runner or I want to do this marathon. You've simply just got to start running, go out for 20 minutes, doesn't matter your distance, come back and repeat it. And then eventually you'll be hitting milestones that you never really knew you could do. And, until you actually challenge yourself and push yourself to do these bigger things, whatever that may be to you as a person, how do you know what you can and can't do? You're placing an assumption on your shoulders that you don't even know is correct. So you're placing a limit on you when actually you could find that you have a secret talent that you never knew about. So for me, like, the reason I push myself to do so many different things is, for example, 18 months ago, I paddleboarded from the Bahamas to Florida overnight.
What?
And it was in a race of
Overnight?
80 miles. Yeah, it was incredible. And I've never paddleboarded really before. And I got this opportunity come up, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll come and paddleboard for 80 miles with you. And I remember standing on the beach at the Bahamas being like, okay, this is going to be a long night. And I've never paddleboarded the ocean before, but I'm going to get to the end. And actually 10 hours later, I rocked up on the beach, obviously exhausted. And I actually came third.
Oh my goodness, but that's
And
crazy.
which is crazy because I never even knew that maybe I could even paddleboard like that. I just didn't know. I just decided just to do it,
But
say yes,
I'm
find
assuming
out,
I'm
and
ass-
do it along the way.
I'm assuming you guys had some sort of assistance and people around you,
Yeah,
like.
yeah. So we had support boats and things, obviously, 'cause otherwise I would probably still be out there getting lost. Um, but you look back at these times, and yes, I remember 3 miles in being like, wow, there's a thunder and lightning storm coming our way. This is going to be so hard. And I'm so tired already because I should be asleep right now, because obviously doing things at night is always harder anyway if you're used to sleeping at night.
Hmm.
But also, like, the experiences you get along the way, like the sunrise was phenomenal. Like, there was no land either side, anywhere to be seen, and the sun was coming up, and all you could see was the sky and the sea. And, it was incredible, and it's something that I'll never forget. And, there were obviously probably a lot of sharks as well, but apparently they're friendly in the Bahamas. Apparently they were good to us that night. But you know what? Like, this is the thing. Like, people can do so much more. Like, I think there's a statistic that says we actually only really utilize 40% of what we can do. Imagine if you bumped that up by a few percent every single time. Imagine then what you could do.
Wow, I'm literally like, because I didn't even know that this was a thing, to be honest. Like, wow. I mean, overnight. I mean, I get really like scared just with the thought of it. But I mean, wow, literally wow. But now you just brought an image to my mind that, yeah, imagine yourself in the middle of the ocean and the only thing you can see is the sun rising, no
Yeah.
land.
Imagine.
That
Just
can,
imagine that.
yeah. Well, you lived that, didn't you?
I did. And I
Incredible.
actually, I remember, I think it must have been about 4 a.m. and the sunrise was around 6. And obviously, we'd been going for 4 hours. I was like, right, all I've got to do is make it to 6 a.m. and I'm going to have a new lease of life because the sun is going to be phenomenal. And, it's just going to give me the energy I need to get to the end of this race.
Wow. Wow. Seriously, like very impressive. Very, very impressive. Amazing. Such an achievement and such an experience as well. Wow. Do you have or follow any morning routines?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of routines, me, because I do believe in the power of kind of getting up right. I would always get up at 5 a.m., which most people think I'm a bit crazy for, but I'd always get up at 5 a.m. and I would always have the same ritual. Like I get up, get my cup of tea, kind of sit and have a bit of a mobility,
What tea do you drink?
just normal English breakfast tea in the morning.
No milk.
No, with milk.
Okay.
Is that okay?
It is absolutely fine. I love Earl Grey with a dash of milk.
Just in case you ever need to make me tea, that's how I have it. But yeah, so basically I'll get that and then I kind of like get myself like ready for the day by having a bit of a stretch and a bit of a mobility, getting my body back moving. And this is all before I kind of looked at my phone and kind of things like that, because obviously we spend, especially these days and quarantine and things, so much time on social media or phones because it's my job as well, that I kind of just want to have like the power hour, as I like to call it, of just me doing my thing, getting myself ready for the day, because I'm a firm believer if you win the first hour of the day, you win the entire day. So you've got to nail that morning routine before you start anything else, because you've got to set yourself up and you've got to set up your mind ready for whatever that day is going to bring you, because there's always going to be things in your day that maybe didn't go quite right or that don't do as well in or whatever, but actually they don't have to control your whole day, they don't have to ruin your day. And that is why a lot of things that I need to get done in my day, I book in with myself like a non-negotiable meeting, because I just think it's really important. And having a routine that you stick to can be the game changer.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. I love the fact that you said about 5 a.m. because I've been more and more reading about it and hearing about very successful people from all walks of life that they have that as the waking up hour, especially if if you have a family and then you can basically tackle so many things before, say, kids are getting up and to take them to school and things like that. And I think it's really amazing what happens to circadian rhythm as well when you manage to go early to bed the night before and waking up early. I do struggle a little bit with the 5 a.m. club, but yeah, I'm on the 6:30 a.m. kind of club these days, so I'm slowly getting there. And you did not mention anything about breakfast, so you
Oh,
tell
I
me
have
about
breakfast, don't you worry. I don't
that.
want you to worry about that because I literally love food. Breakfast for me is actually the most important meal of the day. I know like that's a bit cliche, but it actually is for me. But I know it's not actually like you don't have to eat breakfast to be successful. This is what I'm trying to say, because I think a lot of people out there are like, oh, you have to eat breakfast, but it's actually not about that. But for me, like I find that if you have like something that sets you up for the day, because normally once I'm up, I've got so much to do that I need brain power and I need fuel to kind of get me going, especially with the volume of training. And for me, breakfast not only fuels the day, but it will start fueling the first session of my training. So I normally train twice a day.
So in the morning, you normally what do you do normally in the morning, training wise, and what will be the second part of the day?
So normally for me, I'll do gym work first. So like lifting, So for me, I'll have peanut butter and jam on toast for breakfast,
Okay.
naturally. And then obviously I'll go and train about 40 minutes after I've had it. So it allows my body to
Sorry, Sophie.
digest.
Let me just hold you there for a bit because I'm quite interested because I am very um, methodic with my diet and how I eat and things like that. So I'm quite interested in hearing about, especially people like yourself, an athlete. So you make a cup of tea, you do your stretches, and then it's toast, and then you go training. Do you tend to keep that this particular routine every day, or like breakfast will change depending on what kind of training you're going to be tackling that on that morning?
Yeah, so it's very training dependent. Like for me, if I'm going to go to the gym, jam on toast is perfectly fine. If, for example, I've got a big bike session, I might have the jam on toast, but I also might have something like porridge to get more carbs in. And obviously it's slow release, so it will obviously last a bit longer as well.
And no butter, just jam on the toast.
Oh, butter, jam, and toast and
Uh-huh.
peanut. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
don't you worry,
Okay,
it's in
that
there.
okay, good. Very well. And then after training, it's then probably I would say what lunchtime. Do you then have a regular meal at lunchtime?
So I have after training, it will be my post workout, which is my favourite meal of the day. So
Hmm.
it's whey protein, milk, and cocoa pops because obviously it's high in glucose, so sugars, and it gets into the muscles quickly to get them restored. And basically, cocoa pops was my like favorite growing up as a child, so it's quite a fond thing. And obviously, when my nutritionist was like, "Do you know what? You can have them for your post workout," it was the best day of my life.
Wow. So it's Cocoa Pops and what regular milk.
Yep,
Okay. And you add whey protein on it.
yep,
Okay. So that's recovery after an
yep,
excruciating session training.
yep.
Wow. Okay. And then in the afternoon, do you try and take a nap before you go out and train again, or?
Generally, no, because I've also got work I need to do on my laptop and like things like that. So I'll do all of my work. Obviously, have some lunch as well. And then the afternoon session will be more of a cardio base, so it will be bike, run, or swim.
Right, okay. And if you're running, I would imagine that you wouldn't do a heavy leg training before tackling a run, would you?
Normally, if I'm doing a run, I would have done an upper body session. So yeah,
Right, okay, cool. And do you like cooking? Do you cook for yourself?
yes, I love cooking. Well, I live on my own, so if I don't cook, I don't eat. So, but I do love to kind of experiment with new recipes and find things. Um, because who doesn't really? I think everyone loves to eat good food, and there's nothing more disappointing than a very sad meal.
Oh,
So, yeah, I will try and come up with some really nice recipes every week, and then obviously maybe more of a weekend experiment and try things that maybe take a bit longer. But now it's obviously getting into the winter. I'm a massive fan of a slow cooked dinner where
hmm.
it's been on cooking all day, and then obviously when it comes to eating, it just tastes amazing.
And is there room for a glass of wine or a beer, or you don't drink alcohol?
Yeah, there is. I mean, as I've said, I don't really restrict. I mean, I don't really drink anyway, just because my body doesn't really agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was out with my friends, or it was obviously an occasion, or if I did fancy it, I wouldn't say no. Um, but obviously, with the volume of training, I would restrict drinking to like a weekend, or if I had a rest day coming up, I'd probably do it the day before.
And is that because of the training load, or is there anything in connection with cystic fibrosis?
Partly the training and partly the CF, like just because it does affect the way my body works, and
Right.
it does make me breathless. So if I've got training the next day, I don't particularly want to have to be battling that as well. But
Mm-hmm.
then, having said that, I wouldn't say no if it was somebody's birthday or if I wanted it, despite that. But equally, I want to perform well, so
Of
it's
course.
kind of like a catch-22. But
Right.
equally, everyone has different things that they love to have,
Absolutely.
and so for some people, it's like glass of wine at the end of the week. And I wouldn't say particularly take it out. Some people it's chocolate, so it's very independent, isn't it, as to whoever you are.
Yeah. Do you take any supplements? Do you supplement with vitamins? I mean, you mentioned whey protein. Are there any other types of supplements that you take?
Yeah, so I take vitamin D. I have BCAAs.
Mm-hmm.
So I train on those. I train on Lucozade Sport. I have multivitamins, probiotics. I think that's it. Yeah. So yeah, I have a few every day.
Very well. Yeah, I'm a big fan of supplementing and supplementing it right. It's really important. I think we can't get all the nutrition that we need from food alone, unfortunately. I mean, with the soils around the world so depleted, and we are not making any clear efforts in order to restore them. Unfortunately, we do need to supplement, but there's nothing that no, there's no supplement in the world that will um, get you the benefits of raw food, of real food, of of like getting the nutrients from actually, the food themselves. I mean, it's not replaceable, I would say, but it's very important. It's very important. It's very clever, I think, to be able and to understand how and when to consume
Mm.
those things. What do you do to unwind? What's the perfect lazy day on your books?
For me, I will take my dog for a walk because I've got a very young dog. So I take her out. Obviously, I take her out every day, but I would probably take her out for a longer stroll. Maybe take her with me to a coffee shop, just chill there. Like I'm a big fan of coffee. Um, I mean, Sunday when I got back from my 25-hour ride, I basically hid under a blanket and watched Netflix for a few hours.
That's good.
Um, but like I actually am more relaxed if I do something more calm. So like it doesn't mean that I have to sit down all day. I could simply just go and see some friends, chill out with them, or as I've said, go for like a walk. Baking actually is quite a chill out activity for me, which is lovely. Obviously, a great result at the end as well. We can enjoy that. Um, but I think obviously everyone's perception of chilling out is very different. Like I'd never be a person to be able to stay in bed all day, just because I enjoy being in nature, and I think that's powerful, even if it is kind of a bit more restful, or like you're going for a stroll on the beach or the woods or something like that. And I think anything that brings your mind peace needs to be in there.
Do you have what are your do you have any beliefs? Do you believe on anything? And I know it's quite a broad question, but basically, if you have any spiritual practices and particular beliefs.
I wouldn't say anything specific, but at the same time, I do believe that there is a higher power. I do believe the universe listens, and I do believe in manifestation. And what you put out, you get back. So karma. Um, but also, I think if you work hard, you can make things happen. So I do believe that you do have a set path, and you know, doors close and doors open to get you directed down to your ultimate purpose. And I do believe everyone does have a purpose. You've just got to look for it. Um, but I wouldn't say that I don't have a religion or anything like that.
What are some of the subjects that you enjoy exploring about outside of the ones that we've already talked,
Um,
or
that's a
interests that you might
good
have?
question. The thing is, I guess for me, like I'm always kind of researching into like how to be, stronger in my mind, be able to explore. Like I love travel, so like I'm always looking into different places I want to go and explore and climb and things. Obviously, once COVID is gone, and you know, I'm very lucky. I've got some great people around me that would also come and do all of that with me. Um, because I think there's so many amazing places in the world, and like I'm a huge fan of like sustainability and like trying to find ways to live better and like kind of help the planet. And because I think that's such a big thing, and I think it's actually something that people should be shouting out a bit more as well, especially at the moment. Because I don't know if you've started following David Attenborough on Instagram. He's now made it onto Instagram. And I think like it's super important to kind of look into all of that. And I'm just such a massively outdoor kind of person, so all of that kind of stuff.
Who doesn't like traveling, right?
Yeah,
God,
exactly.
it's just crazy how the world is at the moment. Just unbelievable. We don't know what's going to happen next, and yeah, it's been quite troubling for everyone, especially it's part of your work traveling, you know.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. But we kind of have to be hopeful that next year will be a better year in regards of, well, like you said, I mean, I can totally relate to what you said at the beginning of the conversation, that you've had a great year, you know. And I think there's nothing wrong on saying that, even though we know the situation is very delicate. But you know, people's circumstances are different, and I think a lot of people did not put their spare time in good use during this period. And it's not down to me, obviously, to judge anybody. I'm basically just openly talking about, you know, how things work in general. And you said that you did manage to work really hard and make good use of your time and be productive. But that's kind of like your life ethos anyway. That's how you live life, which
Yeah.
is totally admirable. And I absolutely relate to that 100%, 100%. Sophie, it's been really, really good talking to you. I mean, really inspirational. I mean, I read a bit about you before this conversation, just, you know, to prep a bit, but then I got to learn more about you. And well, that paddling to the Bahamas,
Never going to forget that one, are
that
you?
no, I will not. Definitely not. I mean, until somebody tells me that did the same thing, which I think it's very unlikely to happen. But yeah, that's amazing. Well done on everything that you've endured in your life so far, and for being like, you know, so positive and thinking forward and upbeat. I mean, that's vital energy. That's the kind of energy, that's the kind of attitude that moves the world, you know. It's not moving only your life, but for sure the people that are around you. And that's one, I mean, you know, we need more lights like that throughout the world. And I wish you all the best, and I thank you so very much for your time with us today. If you have anything that you would like to let our listeners to know about, perhaps your social media, where do they can find you? Because I think you're a personal coach as well, aren't you? We didn't even touch that, but there you go. Just leave us your social media where it's easier for people to get in touch with you if they need any advice, if they want to share their stories with you, or if they want to hire you to be their personal coach to paddle through from Miami to the Bahamas or something like that.
Yeah, so basically my Instagram is the best thing. All of my platforms from my YouTube and everything are all my name. So just Sophie Grace Holmes and you will find me. But of course, like, I try and reply to everybody. So yeah, if anyone wants to drop me a message, then I will get back to them.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sophie.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation, this podcast, as much as I did doing it. So if that's the case, please do follow on Instagram at rollercoastercarl, myself at Carl Casagrande, on Twitter, same thing, Facebook, same thing. Do subscribe. Do subscribe on iTunes, subscribe on Spotify. That's very, very much appreciated. Thank you, and have a great, great day. Cheers. Bye-bye.